Love that heals, not hurts. Tell me in the comments, do you believe two broken people can build something whole together? Today's story is not just about design or luxury. It's about two strangers, scarred by the past, learning to trust, to feel, and to fall, slowly but deeply. So, grab your tea, find a quiet corner, and let's begin. Clara Jennings was no stranger to luxury. She had designed for tycoons, artists, even royalty. But the penthouse atop Ashbourne Tower in the heart of London made her pause. It wasn't the opulence. It was flawless to the point of sterility. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished marble underfoot, every element spoke of power and control. And yet, something was missing. Warmth. The invitation had arrived a week ago, handwritten from Rowan Thorne, the elusive CEO of Thorne & Co., one of the largest real estate empires in Europe. Just one line, "I need a space I can call home." Clara was used to difficult clients, but those 7 words intrigued her and struck something deeper. A man who had built empires couldn't build belonging? As she stepped through the main door, the subtle scent of leather and oak greeted her. Clara knew this wasn't just another commission. It was the beginning of a story waiting to be told, and perhaps a heart waiting to be healed. Clara adjusted her dress before stepping into Rowan Thorne's private office. She wasn't easily rattled, but there was something about that brief letter that made her more deliberate than usual. "Mr. Thorne will see you now," the assistant said, voice calm but commanding. The door opened without a sound. The office was a masterpiece of minimalism. Glass, steel, stone, and light. Beautiful but empty. Then she saw him. Rowan stood with his back to her, his tall frame blending into the London skyline. When he turned, Clara held her breath, not for his appearance, though he was striking, but for his eyes. Steel blue, unreadable, filled with unsaid things. "Miss Jennings," his voice was deep, textured, like an old record player humming a melody only heard in silence. "I expected someone older." Clara raised an eyebrow, unfazed. The air between them sparked with unspoken challenge. "I expected someone less arrogant." A pause, then the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but a crack in the mask. "They say you don't just design spaces, you read the people who inhabit them." "People are easier to read than they think," Clara replied, not breaking eye contact. Rowan nodded slowly, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. "So, tell me, what do you see when you look at me?" Clara walked forward, unflinching. A man who surrounds himself with beautiful things, but never allows himself to truly touch them. Something shifted in his gaze, not anger, but recognition, perhaps caution, perhaps hope. A week after their first meeting, Clara returned to the penthouse for a deeper assessment. But she hadn't expected to be trapped there by a sudden summer storm. "Summer thunder," Rowan said, standing near the window as lightning fractured the London sky. "I have a generator, but the lights might flicker." A loud crack sounded, and the entire penthouse went dark. Clara chuckled softly. "I hope you have candles." Rowan disappeared down the hallway, returning minutes later with the warm glow of several large pillar candles. He placed them on the coffee table, the flickering light softening his features, less sharp, less distant, more shadow and more truth. They sat on the sofa, each with a glass of wine. Clara glanced at him through the shifting candlelight. "You're not fond of the dark, are you?" she asked. Rowan swirled his glass. "I grew up in it, both kinds." Clara stayed silent. She didn't want to push, but he continued. "My father drank, my mother disappeared into silence, and I learned to read the room to survive." Clara set down her glass, leaning forward slightly. "I know silence too. When my husband cheated the 3rd time, I lost my voice, until I chose to walk away." Rowan looked at her, his eyes heavy with unsaid words. "Did you ever want to disappear?" "I did, but then I realized just because someone colorblind calls a masterpiece meaningless doesn't mean it isn't beautiful." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was filled with connection. No explanations, no defenses. In the soft gold light, two hearts, once carefully sealed, began to open. The rain continued to fall, a gentle soundtrack to the silence between them. Clara sat cross-legged on the sofa, her head tilted as she watched Rowan study the flickering candlelight. "Are you always like this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "In control of everything, except your feelings?" Rowan gave a quiet laugh. "I control my emotions better than you think." "Do you?" She leaned in, just slightly. "I'm not so sure." The space between them vanished in an instant. A brush of fingers, a gaze held too long, and then their mouths found each other like instinct. The first kiss was unhurried, unforced, simply an acknowledgement. "I feel this too." Rowan pulled her closer, his hand settling on her waist, warm and steady, but then he stopped. "Clara," he murmured, forehead resting gently against hers. "I don't know where this leads." She didn't pull away. "Neither do I. But I'm not afraid of it." He looked at her, his eyes shining with something close to fear, not of her, but of himself, because he knew that if he allowed himself to want her, to need her, losing her would destroy him. "I'm not good with fragile things," he said. "And I've learned," Clara replied, placing a hand over his heart, "how to rebuild what's been broken." Silence. A choice. Then Rowan kissed her again, deeper this time, more honest. And they let themselves fall into that moment, surrounded only by candlelight, rain, and the quiet beat of hearts calling to each other. They began seeing each other more often after that rainy night. Design meetings stretched longer, filled with glances, and sometimes ended in quiet evenings together. Clara never asked about his past. She knew some wounds only opened when the bearer was ready, but the past didn't wait. One evening, Clara arrived at the penthouse earlier than expected. She found Rowan standing near the door, his entire body tense like a drawn wire. "What's wrong?" she asked. He didn't respond right away, just held up a hand for silence. A voice boomed from the other side, raspy, rough, laced with bitterness. "Open the damn door, Rowan. After all I gave you, you owe me. I'm still your father, remember?" Clara felt the air shift. This wasn't the Rowan she knew. The man before her looked hollow, like the air had been sucked out of him. "You should go," he said, not meeting her eyes. "No," she whispered. "I'm not letting you face this alone." At last, he opened the door. The man outside was a ruined version of him, but with familiar eyes. The father who had vanished after tearing Rowan's childhood apart now returned. For money. The conversation was short, cold, denying, painful. When the man finally left, Rowan closed the door slowly. Clara saw his hand tremble, not from fear, but from anger long held back. "She can never come back again," Rowan said, his voice rough. Clara didn't speak. She simply took his hand, not to fix him, but to remind him. This time, he wasn't alone. Rowan had locked himself away. Since the confrontation with his father, he had vanished. No messages, no explanations, just silence. Thick, immovable silence. Clara didn't blame him. She understood. When pain raises you, retreat becomes instinct. You hide before anyone can get too close. But this time, she wouldn't let him disappear. A message came unmarked. "He's leaving the country. If you have anything left to say, be at the private airfield before 8. Clara went, without hesitation. Earlier that week, she had found the ring Rowan once tucked away in a drawer, unspoken, unfinished. She brought it now, not as a question, but as an answer. Rowan sat inside the jet, his frame upright but weary. When she entered, he turned, his eyes flickering with relief and regret, as if her presence both healed and hurt. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly. "And you're still leaving?" Clara asked. He looked away. "I can't let you see this part of me. The weak part. The darkness." "I already have," she whispered. "And I'm still here." Rowan stood, keeping his distance. "You deserve someone whole. I'm nothing but broken edges pretending to be strong." Clara opened the velvet box and placed the ring in his hand. "Then let me be the glue. Not perfect, but real. Silence stretched between them. Then Rowan looked at her. No masks, no armor, just a man at the edge of fear and love. "I'm tired of running," he exhaled. "If you still want me, I'll stay." Clara stepped forward, taking his hand. "Not only want you, I've been waiting for you since the very first day." "So, you're staying in London?" Clara asked, still holding his hand. Rowan looked at her. No more hiding in his eyes, only surrender. Then he shook his head. "No, but you're coming with me." Before she could ask more, he signaled to the pilot. The jet began to taxi. Clara turned to him, surprised. "Where are we going?" "The only place in the world I've never carried my fear," he said, smiling softly. "Santorini." 4 hours later, they landed on the sun-soaked Greek island. Rowan rented a quiet villa perched on a cliff where the sunset spilled gold over the Aegean like a dream. And there, Clara saw a different Rowan for the first time. He laughed, really laughed. Not the polite smile of a CEO or the guarded grin of a hurt man. They visited morning markets, drank wine in the afternoons, swam in turquoise water, rode scooters across the island, and argued over mastic-flavored gelato. 4 days. No phones, no meetings, no ghosts. Just laughter, gentle touches, and glances that needed no explanation. One night, lying on the rooftop under stars, Clara turned to him and asked, "Rowan Thorne, what are you doing?" He faced her, his gaze soft, learning how to live without the mask. She smiled, impressive. He pulled her into his arms, whispering, "With you, everything's worth learning." Clara knew this wasn't just a getaway. It was Rowan's final goodbye to the man he used to be, and the first hello to the life he was finally ready to live. With her. When they returned to London, the first thing Rowan did was toss all the old interior design plans into the fireplace. "They're not me anymore," he said. "And this isn't just a space, it needs to be a home." Clara sat barefoot on the wooden floor, watching him tear through each blueprint like a ritual of release. For years he had built to keep people out. Now he was dismantling his own walls with her. They started from scratch, no lead architects, no design team, just the two of them, 2 mugs of coffee and sun-drenched mornings sketching on napkins and scrap paper. Clara picked a new wall color, ivory cream with a breath of smoky gray, like a sigh. Rowan chose the wood for the bookshelves, raw walnut, unpolished, because the scratches tell stories. She left her fingerprints everywhere, a few fresh flowers in an old vase, a reading chair by the window, books on mindfulness tucked between crime thrillers. Each day, the space changed, not just in form, but in feel. What was once a fortress became a sanctuary, warm, alive, beating with heart. One afternoon, Rowan came home with a painting, not from a gallery, but a tiny shop in Santorini. "You bought art?" Clara asked, surprised. He nodded. "This one reminded me of you, soft but strong." She looked at it, a woman seated beneath a setting sun, eyes not meeting the viewers, yet full of certainty. Clara said nothing. She simply stepped behind him and wrapped her arms around him. Weeks later, when Clara returned to check final finishes, she noticed a small plaque mounted beside the entrance. "Thorne Jennings residence," she laughed. "You made it official?" Rowan emerged from the kitchen, holding 2 cups of tea. "I just wrote down what I know will never change." In that space, with warm light, the scent of mint tea, and soft jazz playing in the background, Clara realized they hadn't just rebuilt an apartment. They had built a life. Time moved gently in the space they had built. Clara and Rowan didn't count days. They measured life by shared coffee in the mornings, by leftovers kept warm in the oven after late nights, by sticky notes scattered across the house reading, "Miss you, tonight, just us." Rowan changed, not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. He stopped trying to control every beat and learned to surrender to love. Clara changed too. She stopped holding people at arm's length to protect herself. She learned to receive a hug, a gaze, a love that didn't need proving. One early spring day, Rowan brought Clara back to where it had all started, the small art gallery where they'd once crossed paths before knowing each other's names. No candles, no roses, just the soft hush of afternoon light and an empty room. Clara walked in, smiling. "You planning to buy another painting?" Rowan stepped out from behind a curtain. White shirt, no tie, just him. No performance, no armor. "No," he said, walking toward her. "This time, I want to build something that lasts, with you. A life, not polished, but ours." He dropped to one knee, opening a small velvet box. Inside, a slender ring with a clear, deep sapphire. "Claire Jennings," he said, voice slightly trembling, "you've taught me how to love without conditions. You've turned my house into a home. Now I have one question. Will you help me build the rest of our life?" Clara laughed, eyes shining. "I don't need time to think." "Because I've already said yes," she whispered, pulling him into her arms. The wedding was held 2 months later, on a hillside outside the city where ancient olive trees leaned into the wind and lavender lined the path. Clara wore a simple white dress, her hair loose, dancing slightly in the breeze. Rowan couldn't stop looking at her, not for beauty alone, but for the stillness she brought into every space she touched. They spoke their vows under the golden sky. "I can't promise to never fall, but I promise to always reach for your hand when I do. I can't promise life will always be easy, but I promise I'll always be your home." They exchanged rings, not as bindings but as reminders. Love is a choice, daily. The celebration was small, filled with close friends. The soft sound of violin drifted through the air, scented with sun and fresh-cut grass. No toast could top their laughter. No words could match the way they looked at each other, as if nothing in the world mattered more than the person before them. That night, they returned home, not a place, but a state of heart. Rowan kissed Clara's forehead. "Thank you for finding me," he whispered. She smiled, eyes soft as the moonlight outside their window. "No, you let me find you, and somehow we both found home."